Hi everyone, it's Lana from Lana Under Pressure, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make authentic Cuban arroz con pollo, or yellow chicken and rice, in your Instant Pot. Now, Cuban arroz con pollo is like the original one-pot meal, and that's what makes it so great during these crazy quarantine times, is because it's really easy, flavorful, but you can make everything in one pot. You have your starch, you have your protein, you have your vegetables, everything done. The other thing that makes it such a great dish, and not only just this dish, but Cuban cooking in general, is that Cuban food is about flexibility and resilience. And so when we're in this quarantine era right now, where we can't get a lot of the, things that we might need, special ingredients, Cuban cooking is all about being flexible with your ingredients. And so as I cook, I'm going to show you different substitutions you can make if you don't have the ingredients that it calls for. Now, the first thing we're going to start with is the chicken. Obviously, you need the chicken in the arroz con pollo, right? So what I have here is 6 boneless, skinless chicken thighs cut into about 1-inch pieces. Now, if you don't have boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and you just have the regular chicken thighs, you can debone it yourself. Or you can use chicken breast, that's fine too. So either one of those is great. Just make sure that you cut it up into 1-inch pieces. That's really important when cooking in the Instant Pot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flavor this chicken first. And what I'm gonna use is, I'm gonna take 1 teaspoon of kosher salt and some ground black pepper. If you're using table salt, you're gonna wanna use a little bit less, because table salt is a little more potent than kosher salt. And you're just going to mix that up, make sure all the pieces are coated, and then you're going to go ahead and set it aside. So now we're going to go ahead and get the liquid that we're going to use to cook our rice. And we want to make this really flavorful, because this is what's going to flavor our rice as it cooks in the Instant Pot. So first you're going to start off with 2 cups of water, and to that I'm going to add 1.5 cups of beer. Now you can use whatever beer you have on hand. You don't want to use anything fruity or really strong flavor, but really you don't have to use anything expensive, just whatever beer you like. If you don't have beer, you can substitute a 3/4 cup of white wine and then just add an extra 1/4 cup of water instead. If you don't have any alcohol in your house, which we're in quarantine, so why don't you have alcohol in your house? But if you don't want to use any alcohol, you can go ahead and just leave it out and just use the water instead. And you're going to add then an extra 1.5 cups of water. To that, we're going to add better than bouillon, the chicken broth concentrate. Now you're going to add 2 teaspoons of that. If you don't have the better than bouillon, you can use 1 bouillon cube instead. If you don't have either of those, but you have chicken broth, then you can just switch out the amount of chicken broth for water. So if you have 2 cups of chicken broth, then just use that instead of the 2 cups of water. It really is whatever you want to do. To that, we're also going to have 1 tablespoon of salt. We're going to use 2 packets of the Sazon Goya con azafrán, and what that means is it has saffron in it. So that way you don't have to use your own saffron. And these are really flavorful. You're going to need 2 packets of those. Now, in my description below, if you don't have Sazon or you don't want to use that, I will have a link to how you can make your own homemade Cuban Sazon Seasoning, and then you would just use 2 tablespoons of that instead of the two packets. You're also going to add a little extra cumin to it, because the Sazon will have cumin, but you can add a 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon depending how much cumin you like, and you're going to add that. Now, lastly, what I want to go over is, this is called Bijol, and Bijol is what we use instead of saffron. And the reason I love this for arroz con pollo is because if you've ever made arroz con pollo or you thought about it, it usually uses the saffron, and saffron is great. It has lovely flavor to it. It's what makes the rice yellow. The only thing is, saffron is like, for a little tiny bit, it's like $20 for like 4 ounces of it. I mean, it's ridiculously expensive, and especially in these times, we need to budget this down. And so what's great is, because Cuban arroz con pollo, you still get the flavor and the yellow color, but we use Bijol, and this whole jar right here, this whole shaker is like $4 on Amazon. So I love this. This is what we use, and this is what'll give you that red color or that yellow color without having to break the bank. So now I've added all those ingredients into my mixing bowl, and I'm going to go ahead and whisk. And as you see, you have this really deep reddish orange color, and this is the color you're looking for that's gonna give you the perfect arroz con pollo. Now we're gonna go ahead and start by sauteing our chicken. And that's gonna help. We're not gonna cook the chicken, but we're just gonna saute it and really brown it. And that's gonna give us the brown bits on the bottom of the Instant Pot that's gonna help increase the flavor into our arroz con pollo. So now we're gonna go ahead and press saute. And we're gonna hit the adjust button until it says more. And when it gets hot, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And when the olive oil gets hot, we're gonna add our chicken. Now our Instant Pot is hot and we're gonna add half of the chicken. And the reason you add half of the chicken is because you don't wanna crowd it, because if you crowd it, then really the chicken just starts to boil in its juices, so you wanna make sure it has enough room. So we're gonna add half of our chicken. And we're gonna go ahead and let it get browned. Now, you're gonna notice that the chicken is gonna stick to the bottom. That's okay. We want that to happen because that's what's gonna allow the browning to happen, that's gonna give flavor to our liquid. So we added half of the chicken and we just wanna let it brown. And we're gonna use a wooden spatula to go ahead and scrape it and make sure it browns on all sides. Now remember, we're not cooking the chicken, we're just browning it. Now once you start to see just a little bit of browning and some of the brownness stick to the bottom, we're gonna go ahead and remove the chicken, and you're just gonna put it on a plate and set it aside. Now we're gonna go ahead and saute the other half and do the same exact thing. Now our second batch of chicken is done browning. We're gonna turn off the saute because we don't wanna let it burn. And we're gonna go ahead and remove the chicken and put it aside. Now, whatever juices are accumulated on the plate, you want to make sure you keep. So we've set our chicken aside and we've turned off the saute, and now we're going to get to our next part. Now we're going to go ahead and saute our vegetables. And so we're going to have 1 minced yellow onion. You want to have 1 minced green bell pepper and 1 minced yellow bell pepper. Now, I'm in quarantine, so I didn't have a yellow bell pepper. So use whichever one you have. If you only have yellow, go ahead and use that. If you have red or green, just go ahead and substitute it however you can. I only had a green one, so that's what we're using today. You also want 4 cloves of minced garlic. And you want a 1/4 cup of water, and that's a trick I'm gonna show you in a minute. So now we have our empty liner, and all it has is the grease and the nice brown bits from our chicken. We're gonna go ahead and press saute again. And now this time we don't want it on more, we just want it on plain saute because we don't want it to get too hot. And we're gonna add our onion. And you don't have to add any more oil because it already has some of the olive oil plus some of the fat from the chicken. If you're using chicken breast that's really lean, you might want to add a little bit more olive oil if you need to. And we're gonna add our green pepper, or whatever color peppers you have. And we're going to give this a stir. As this sautés, it's going to release some of its, the liquid from the peppers and the onions, and that's going to help you to start scraping up the bottom, all those brown bits on the bottom of the liner. We're going to go and let that saute until it's just starting to become translucent. Once your onions and peppers have become really soft and translucent, we're going to go ahead and add the garlic. And mix that in. And now what you want to do is to make sure that you get all of the brown bits and the burns on the bottom. We're going to add 1/4 of a cup of water, a little bit at a time. And once we do that, we're going to go ahead and scrape the bottom of the liner. And you may need to use all of the water. Just use as much as you need. And now this is the really important part, because whenever anybody gets a burn notice, especially when they're cooking rice or pasta after they've sauteed, it's usually because there's burnt bits on the bottom. And the Instant Pot has a safety feature that whenever the bottom gets way too hot, which happens if you have some burned food on the bottom, it'll give you the burn notice. So it's really important, all of that chicken and the brown parts, that you scrape that up. And adding a little bit of water will help you do that. Once all of that has been added, we're going to turn it off and keep scraping. The better you do the scraping now, the least likely you'll get a burn notice while you're cooking. And make sure you get into the corners really well. Now we've gotten all of the bits off, and now we're gonna move on to the next step. Now that our sofrito, which is what we call garlic, onion, and green bell peppered all sauteed together. Now that that's done, now we're gonna put the dish together. And we're gonna start with adding our liquid. And you just wanna give it a whisk just to make sure everything is dissolved well. And pour that into the pot. Now give that a stir. And make sure you have all of those vegetables, all that sofrito inside the liquid. Now we're gonna add 3 cups of white long grain rice. And you don't wanna use parboiled or the short grain rice. You wanna use the long grain white rice. And when you measure that rice out, you wanna make sure you use the cup, the rice cup that comes with the Instant Pot, or if you have a rice cooker, make sure you're using a rice cup. To the liquid, we're gonna go ahead and add 1 jar of diced pimentos. Now, I didn't have diced pimentos, I only had the sliced ones. That's okay, you can use those. If you have the whole ones, you can just dice them up yourself, or if you can't find them or you don't have them, you can leave them out, no problem. We're gonna add all of that, including the liquid. Give it a stir. Now we're gonna add the chicken. And once you add the chicken, you wanna make sure you add any juices that accumulated, but you only wanna add those right on top. You don't wanna mix this in. So make sure the pieces are submerged, but you don't want to push them down so they're touching the liner, just having them sitting on top of the rice. And the last thing we're going to add is 2 bay leaves. Just sit them right on top. Once we've added all the ingredients, we're going to put the lid onto your Instant Pot. Make sure that the vent is to sealed position, and you want to press high pressure, or on this one is manual. And you want to bring it down to 10 minutes. And you don't have to press start again, it will start by itself. Once it's done cooking, we're going to let it natural pressure release, or NPR, for 15 minutes. Our Instant Pot has natural pressure released for 15 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and let out any rest of the pressure that's left in there, and it shouldn't be too much. And we do this by just turning the valve to vent, and you just wait until the little silver pin goes down and we can open the lid. Now that it's done, first what we want to do is go ahead and remove the bay leaves. And because we just placed them on top, that's really easy to do. And you don't want to stir it first with a spoon, because that'll kind of mush the rice up. So what you want to do is use a fork to gently fluff it and stir everything up from the bottom. As you see, it has a really deep yellow color, full of flavor, nice and creamy. The rice and the chicken are done perfectly at the same exact time, and it's really easy to make. Now, if you'd like to go ahead, you can also add things like peas, frozen peas or olives or some, things like that. And what you would do if you wanted to add those is at the end, after the dish is completely done, you'd go ahead and add them in and then fluff it with the fork, mix it in, put the top back on, and just let it sit for an extra 10 minutes, because really it just needs to be warmed through, and then you'd serve. So, I hope you'd enjoyed my recipe and try it out. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel if you liked it, and all my recipes and tips will be in the description below. Thanks for watching. Bye!